Today, we're going to discuss reducing compliance risk in your RIA through operations. Hey guys, just like we've been talking about now for some time, we're looking at the business of financial advisory. For those financial advisors out there who own their own business, I receive so many questions on how to drive value in the company that we decided to set a little mini series together. So if you're not a financial advisor or if you do not own an RIA, that's okay. The concepts that we're going to talk about are directly applicable to you and your business. Now, the compliance risk may not be in terms of the Securities and Exchange Commission. It may be in terms of a state regulatory body that you have to submit your particular business for, or maybe it's a county officiation or some sort of a licensure that you need. Nonetheless, you can reduce risk. You can reduce your compliance and legal risk through operations. See, there's one word that I've noticed throughout the years that the financial advisory community just almost cringes with, and that's the word compliance. Why is that? I've heard some financial advisors throughout the last 20 years refer to compliance as the anti-sales department, or I've heard them say the anti-revenue department, or I've heard compliance say, you know what, they're just against the advisors. And the reality is that's not true. See, compliance helps the business stay in alignment with the regulatory body. That's simply all it does. But my idea for today's podcast is to help you look past the frustration or the uncertainty or whatever your word is for compliance and build a system that can actually be a first line of defense, that builds a system that actually drives the value of your company. See, the last thing we want to have happen is get to the sales day. We're trying to have an 8-figure exit, and a potential buyer comes in and realizes that, hey, your particular company is in danger of being fined, having an enforcement action, or heaven forbid, receiving a cease and desist letter because you don't have good compliance standards in place. So we don't want to harm our 8-figure exit by being, as my days use the term, willy-nilly, by being just lackadaisical when it comes to compliance. Compliance is needed. It's helpful. It keeps everybody playing by the rules. Before I go any further, let me say I'm not an expert in compliance. I'm not. I would challenge you to speak with your attorney or your compliance advisor. And what I'm going to talk about today is not an advice on how to build a compliance department. Rather, it's something you should consider in systematizing your compliance processes. You see, if you do it right, the operational flow of your business can actually be a first line of defense to make compliance less burdensome, to make compliance in alignment with where the regulators would desire us to be. So let's begin with what types of compliance risk might we have and how much will they cost us? Now, if you've ever gone through an inquiry from a regulatory body, you know that they're going to look at a few different things. For example, they're going to look at the books and records to make sure that you have accurate books and records. In 2022, the SEC issued $1.235 billion in penalties for record-keeping violations. Think about that. Just in 2022, the SEC issued $1.235 billion in penalties for record-keeping violations. So one of the things that the SEC is going to look at is making sure that we have accurate books and records and proper documentation. They're going to look at customer complaints. They're going to look at insufficient oversight for the client's best interest. They're going to look at advertising and make sure we're not giving false advertising or misleading data points. They're going to look for current and accurate registrations. And there's a number of other things that they're going to be looking for. In fact, when current and accurate registrations in 2022, the SEC reported that they had 129 actions against issuers who were allegedly delinquent in making required filings with the SEC. So they're going to make sure your registrations are proper. So what if we're not in compliance? What are the repercussions? It could cost us lots of money. In 2022, there were $6.439 billion in various actions ordered by the SEC. Let's call it $5 billion in 2022. That's a lot of money. The most recorded in SEC history ever was last year. That was up, by the way, from $3.8 billion from 2021. The total money awarded, civil penalties, at $4.194. That's how much was actually awarded. So they claimed 6.4, but they were awarded let's call it $2 billion for 2022. So my point is that by not being compliant, you could end up not only hurting or harming your 8-figure exit, but you could end up with a costly penalty, a costly fine, something that could set your business back for years. So compliance is no joke. We all know that. Compliance is no joke. But let's think about how processes can strengthen and make compliance less burdensome. So the next step I want to look at is I want you to test and see if your processes and your team have weaknesses and holes. So as you begin looking for weaknesses and holes in your business, you want to engage your compliance department or your compliance officer, your operations department, and yourself. And what you're looking for is to confirm that compliance is integrated into your processes. So how are you going to do this? You're going to go through a process, pick up a particular process, and you're going to follow it through with the compliance department and look for ways in order to improve or document your files. So for example, let's say you're bringing on a new client. Did you realize through automation that you can design a structure that meets the compliance needs? For years, I've talked to financial advisors at conferences. I've talked to financial advisors whenever I get done speaking on stage. And they'll talk about various things, and processes are often one of the weakest areas of the financial advisory space. And as such, books are often put together, businesses are often put together where they have holes involved. So for example, I've seen to where financial advisors have totally forgotten to issue investment policy statements. I've seen where there's been failure to sign electronic consent. I've seen where prospectuses were not delivered properly. There's a lot of things that we are required to do that by simply integrating the requirements into a process, we can greatly reduce our risk. So if you look at onboarding a new client, did you realize that you, the business owner, your operations team, and the compliance department can work together through an example like the client onboarding process and make sure that it's integrated from the very beginning to the very ending to determine not only are the operational needs met and the advisor client needs met, but also the compliance needs are met automatically through a step-by-step systematic process. Let me challenge you. Have you ever done that? Have you ever had your chief compliance officer or your compliance advisor look at your processes and try to help you determine, hey, can we integrate compliance in our onboarding process or in our annual review process or in our trading process or all the various processes that we utilize day in, day out? Probably not. Probably not. My point in this is that you can test and see. So how do we move forward? How do we say, okay, Justin, we've never done this. How do we move forward with the processes? Well, the first thing you have to do is you should create a compliance calendar. Every RIA should have a compliance calendar on what is needed to transpire during the calendar year so as to not miss any of the requirements that we need. One of the senior financial planning nerds at Kitsis.com, Mr. Ben, said the following. He said, the annual recurring nature of an ongoing RIA compliance task makes it highly conducive to create a compliance calendar for a solo RIA, which helps to systematize and manage compliance risk requirements and deadlines by breaking them up into discrete steps to complete incrementally throughout the year. So there's a reason for a compliance calendar. So when you create your compliance calendar, you can then integrate throughout your various systems, your operational systems, the tasks that are needed throughout the year so it just happens seamlessly. Perhaps you don't have a compliance calendar. Let me challenge you to build one. Let me challenge you to work with your compliance specialist or your CCO, Chief Compliance Officer, and build a compliance calendar, an annual compliance calendar. Why? Because it's going to make sure that the information throughout the year is not missed. It's going to help you plan ahead for the compliance needs so you don't get trapped into pigeonholing a lot of activity at a very time when you need client-facing bandwidth. It's going to increase transparency and allow you to monitor the compliance measures within your company. It's going to facilitate global management. So if you have multiple offices or in multiple states, it's going to help you facilitate global management. And it helps you prepare for the upcoming audit. We're all going to be audited. That's the rules. That's the game we're in. So it helps you prepare for the audit coming up. And if you integrate the compliance calendar into your processes, the everyday processes that you use, then you can help yourself prepare for the upcoming audit and you can build yourself to an 8-figure exit. So a compliance calendar is one of the first steps you start off with. The second thing you do is you create a ticketing system. So for example, Let's say that you want to create a marketing campaign and you're working with an outside marketing team, you, the advisor, you, the owner, out working with this marketing team. And yes, compliance has to review all your marketing material. By having a ticketing system, you can document the actions, the edits, the adjustments, etc., that needs to be done through the compliance department. And upon review and approval, the compliance officer then can close the ticket out and archive the finalization in the right area. So by having a ticketing system or a process for approvals throughout the entire company, you can provide the compliance department what they need in order to deliver ultimately to the auditors whenever that comes about. It also helps you through a ticketing system, helps you to defend against client complaints. So there's a rule I was digging around. There's a rule called 204/2A14. And this rule states that an RIA is required to maintain a copy of each disclosure document and each amendment or revision to that document, and when it was given to the client, when it was sent to the client or prospective clients, along with a record reflecting the dates on which it was given or delivered. So whenever we look at just disclosures, we have to have a system in place that archives all the adjustments we made, whenever they were delivered to the clients, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you look at just the delivery of disclosures and you put your business owner hat on, you can see by integrating the compliance rules and the requirements into your daily operations that you can help facilitate a more compliant business. So by creating a ticketing system within your company, you can make sure that don't have any balls dropping with regards to compliance. So let's say that you do have a compliance calendar. Many people do. And let's say that you have a ticketing system and you've integrated your compliance needs into your operational structures, into your operational workflows, your SOPs, things of that nature. Have you, for my third point here, have you built processes and structures for your compliance department and backwards engineered them? In other words, oftentimes compliance has its own set of requirements. They always do. But compliance build processes many times in a vacuum. And you can work with the operations team to make sure that what you need for compliance is taken care of throughout the calendar year. So for example, one of the things that we should do is we should conduct a record inventory of all physical and electronic records. That's a compliance requirement. Did you realize that you could use operational efficiency to help you do that? I've spoken with many CCOs in my career. In fact, I was working with a group of CCOs on a particular industry problem they were trying to solve, and just thinking with them around a round table at a conference. And we were talking about how many times they work in a silo. The compliance department works in a silo and doesn't think about how operations or how technology or how other things can help them make their jobs more easy or bring structure and processes to the compliance department. I can tell you in my small business, the compliance department became a drain on me personally, trying to deal with all the regs and everything and then trying to connect them backwards with the operations team. It was hard. But if you have a dedicated CCO, then you may consider having the CCO work with the COO, or your chief operating officer within your company, or your operations team in the company to help the compliance department not be the bottleneck of your business. You can implement standards for indexing parameters. You conduct regulatory internal compliance audit. You can securely dispose of obsolete records. All these can be processes that your operations team can help the compliance department with. The reality is this: compliance is here to stay for the financial advisory practice. It is. It's part of the rules we have to abide by. But the simple message for this podcast is this: integrate compliance with your operations team. And vice versa. Integrate operations with compliance. Try to prevent the siloing from happening, which happens so many times. If you can integrate those properly, then you can build a compliance department that's best in class. You can build a compliance department that is advisor-friendly, client-friendly. You can build a compliance department that totally disregards or totally eradicates these rules or these considerations that many advisors have that, hey, compliance is anti-sales, compliance is anti-revenue, compliance is. You can eradicate those as long as you integrate compliance throughout the entire company. My warning to you is this. As you work with compliance, try to prevent it from being the bottleneck. Compliance has usually hard and fast rules they're trying to follow, black and white many times. Our job as business owners is to help the operations team and the compliance team meet both of their expectations. Find a ground that solves or find a solution that solves for the throughput or for the increased revenue of our company. Friends, if we can connect or prevent silos from these departments, we can drive our company to the 8-figure exit. But if we don't integrate operations with compliance and vice versa, then we could be increasing the risk of our company and thus decreasing the value of our company. You know, I get it. Compliance is not one of those things that just make us get up in the morning and get excited, unless you're a compliance officer, which I have many friends who are, and I love them. They're just wired differently than I am. But it's not one that just gets us excited as business owners. We know the horse we're having to ride. We know the thing that we're forced to comply with. We understand it. We get it. My challenge to you is integrate it. Integrate as much as possible into your processes. And in doing so, friends, we can continue to our 8-figure exit. Y'all go out and make it a great day.